Have you guys been noticing how weird lightsabers have gotten?
This... good. Also good. I mean, this is... I don't get the point, but it's alright, I guess.
I think we need to put a cap on it because it's just getting to a point where they're getting stranger and stranger and they're just trying to top each other. I don't know what's next.
The wheels on the bus go round and round.
I shouldn't have asked. What should I do? And I was like, I'll rewatch Rebels, I guess. So I'm kind of taking this at a slower pace and trying to really absorb all of the goodness and see how I feel about it a second time around. I really enjoy Rebels, just as an FYI, and I want to review it on a season-by-season basis. I eventually want to do that with Clone Wars, too. I think that Clone Wars is my favorite of the animated shows, but I really love Rebels as well, and I'm excited to embark on this journey. In terms of Rebels Season 1, when I first watched it, I did not really love it. I felt there was a disconnect between me and the characters. I didn't think it was that interesting. I thought that I didn't feel pulled in. I was not in love with it. I didn't hate it. I just thought it was mediocre. I wasn't as in love with those characters as I was with Clone Wars, which in retrospect was really unfair considering Rebels has this massive task of getting you to fall in love with all new characters, whereas Clone Wars, really it was just Ahsoka in terms of in the beginning of new characters to love. We know Obi-Wan, we know Anakin, we know Padme, we know Dooku, we know Palpatine, we know everybody, we know Yoda. It's just, adding layers to faces we already recognize. Whereas with Rebels, they're just brand new faces, with the exception of some guest stars and everything like that in later editions. So I really felt like when I first watched the show, I just wasn't a fan. Now, though, upon rewatch, I don't know what I was watching before. I don't know if it's because I have a new established connection with these characters thanks to, having watched the whole show, because when season 2 came, I really liked Rebels, and from there I really, really enjoyed it. Originally, I pushed through because I knew that, Clone Wars got off to a very rough start to this monstrosity. So I was kind of like, okay, I can give this a chance. It's not bad. It's just not gripping me. But if season 2 doesn't pull me, I'm out. But I love season 2. But we're not here to talk about season 2. We're here to talk about season 1. I thoroughly enjoyed myself, and I was surprised. I was rewatching it with my mom at one point. She was watching episodes with me, and I just kept saying, I was like, I am shocked how much I am enjoying this, because I haven't watched season 1 in a very long time. My perspective on all the characters are just different. I'm not an Ezra fan. He annoys the crap out of me for most of the show. I liked him better in season 1 than I like him currently when I rewatch episodes. I don't know what it is. I can give the kid some slack. I really think they leaned a little heavier in season 1 into his more Aladdin, a young version of Aladdin-esque behavior. He's a street thief and he's a little bit rougher around the edges. I think they lean into his childlike, innocence as well as his, rougher upbringing or lack thereof. I think they put that into perspective a little bit more when they handle his character. And I just know that they shed that away in later seasons. And he just kind of becomes this, dumb, naive kid the whole time. And I feel like this stage of Ezra is an acceptable character. My one friend said it's because you expect him to grow, and it takes a really long time for that to happen. Whereas in season 1, I really do feel like, for the most part, he's pretty tolerable. And I was very excited about that. I was like, wow, I actually feel bad for you right now. He's still my least favorite character from the Ghost Crew. I think he is a little bit of the stereotypical male protagonist in Star Wars. I loved the rest of the Ghost Crew. I really felt that bond this time. Zeb, I forgot how funny he is. Genuinely so. Not just on a child humor, perspective. And Chopper and the Chopper-Zeb Ezra dynamic is very funny.
You can run a diagnostic on Chopper when I'm done with it.
I forgot that they really were trying to sell that Sabine and Ezra thing, which is so weird and yucky now that I think about it. Just because they just threw that away, thank goodness. Because I do think they set up Rebels to be a little stereotypical in that sense. Oh, Ezra's the young kid, but he'll win her over someday. And I'm just glad they didn't do that with the arc. And I think knowing that now, it makes it a little bit better because we know that they grow from here. Hera is still my favorite character, original character on Rebels. I really appreciated her relationship with Kanan more upon rewatch. I felt like these two have a lot of chemistry, and I think that that's like really palpable there, you know? It's an animated show, and they definitely, I was always under the assumption when I first watched Rebels that they were together. And they're apparently not. Like, I realized that really late into my, like, watching of the first time. And I don't blame myself for mistaking that, because they're just so married.
I have to admit, it's a lot more peaceful aboard with the kids gone.
Yeah, but I'm feeling a bit guilty about sending them...
On a wild Melu run chase?
You know, like, they have him banter to them. They're caring. She uses pet names when she talks to him. They clearly have feelings for each other. I enjoy the Kanan and Hera pairing quite a bit. It's not front and center on the show. It's definitely on the side. But I just really, really loved that. I thought that Kanan, too, as a character, is so sympathetic. He's the Padawan who escaped Order 66, and he carries this immense guilt because he feels like he abandoned his Jedi ideals. And he kind of is very hesitant to train Ezra because on one hand, he knows he kind of has a duty to the Force because of everything he's seen and the fact that his master sacrificed herself for him. But on the other hand, he's kind of like, I've never even finished my own training. So he carries this sense of inadequacy with him, and you learn a little bit more as the season goes on actually how painful it was for him through how Order 66 was. I feel like the Padawan having escaped Order 66 thing is becoming kind of a trend because, you know, Ahsoka was the first to do it, as we know, and then Cal Kestis in Jedi Fallen Order, and of course Kanan in Rebels. And I think that they all have different fates, they all have different outcomes, and they all have different purposes in this world. I think his training with Ezra is super interesting. You definitely feel like they're actually learning together. I appreciate how the whole gang has their place. You never feel like somebody is just lagging. And I think it's the relationship and the chemistry between these characters that really gets you through season 1. It didn't really feel like there was too many dull moments, like episodically. Like, I didn't feel like there was as much filler as, not to compare it to Clone Wars this entire time, but Clone Wars season 1 has a ton of filler in it. And I did not feel the same way about Rebels season 1. I genuinely feel like they carry you through the plot pretty consistently. You know, in the beginning, we start out with with Ezra being kind of recruited into the Ghost Crew, and you figure out that they are just like kind of performing small pockets of rebellious acts, and they're not always doing it in this like bright, shiny way. They're working with smugglers or working with bounty hunters. Lando Calrissian makes an appearance, and like that's one thing I really enjoyed too. Rebels has the benefit of being able to pull from the original trilogy in ways that Clone Wars could never do. I mean, Clone Wars had the prequel trilogy, but like the original trilogy is the trilogy everybody loves, and that's something that you don't really need to like provide extra depth to that because we already love it and we already know it very well. And seeing Lando and having Billy D. Williams show up is just amazing. And of course, Darth Vader starts out the series. You can't dispute how epic that is.
The children of the Force, they must not become Jedi. Yes, Lord Vader.
There's just so many really good episodes in season 1 that I totally forgot about. The Luminara one hit me so hard, so freaking hard, especially after watching the Clone Wars again. Like, I did my Clone Wars rewatch, and then of course Clone Wars ended, and it establishes this feeling of loneliness in the galaxy for the Jedi and just how sparse they are. The Grand Inquisitor is a menacing villain. I did not remember that. His lightsaber is absolutely jank. I don't understand why. Like, it's so clear to me watching Rebels, though, I felt this way the first time and I feel this way now, is that there's just so many aspects of this show that were clearly invented to sell toys. And the biggest is the lightsabers. So, like, the Grand Inquisitors, his lightsaber does this weird helicopter motion, and they love to show it in slow-mo, and it looks really dumb, actually. He's much better when he's actually just, like, fighting, and he's not doing the weird swirly, spinny thing. He's actually a pretty menacing villain. He's scary-looking. I realized really late into this that he's that same species that I forget the name of, that appears in Revenge of the Sith when Obi-Wan shows up to go battle Grievous. I thought that was Utapau, right? Maybe. He kind of carries the purpose of Vader did in like A New Hope. He's just squashing down all of the Jedi if he can find them. One thing I noticed that was really weird was they have hyperspace tracking in this show. And I remember that vaguely, but this show premiered in 2014. So this season aired like 6 years ago. The Last Jedi came out in 2017, and they were treating hyperspace tracking like it was a novel concept.
They've tracked us through light speed.
That's impossible.
Yes.
But this takes place before A New Hope.
Oh, please. The Imperials can't follow us through hyperspace. Can they?
Imperial XX-23 Esthra Tracker was developed by Sinar Systems to trace ships through hyperspace to destination.
The Last Jedi takes place like a good 30 years after Return of the Jedi. So, don't know what's going on there. This show is definitely a little lighter in terms of violence. I think the choreography kind of takes a little bit of a dip this season in terms of lightsaber battles. The Kanan and Grand Inquisitor battles, like throughout, like they have quite a few, and they're pretty cool when he's not doing that stupid slow motion thing. Kanan's lightsaber is pretty traditional, which I appreciated. Ezra builds a blaster lightsaber, which when I first looked at that, I was like, oh, that's corny. That's cheesy. I'm not one of those purists that's kind of like, it has to look this way. I don't have that much beef with Kylo Ren's lightsaber. You know, I get it. They want the next Darth Maul moment, because let's be honest with ourselves, that's what we're trying to top every single time. And they still have yet to do it, because that's such a novel concept of the dual-bladed lightsabers that you just can't. I mean, even George Lucas couldn't. He gave Grievous 4 lightsabers and hoped that would just be as sufficient as the double-bladed lightsaber, and it didn't do it, you know? But in terms of Ezra's stupid, gun lightsaber, it's to sell toys. Plain and simple, very clear. I can't wait till it gets wrecked in season 2, because it's stupid to look at. I don't like it. And like, he shows up, he's like, oh, I'm not using my lightsaber. I'm like, Ezra, the season finale is a little lackluster for me for most of it. I thought that, like, the Grand Inquisitor, like I said, he presents himself throughout, and they throw him in enough where it's exciting, and he's like, crap, here I am. And he just shows up everywhere, and he's doing his thing. The Imperials are perfect. I love how pale and ghosty white they are, because that's what they are in the movies. It's really exciting, like I said, when like your Lando Calrissians or your Bail Organas show up. It's really exciting when your Ahsoka Tano's show up. I think her being Fulcrum and that reveal in the end, it does totally make the entire season finale epic, and it makes season 2 just that much more appealing. And some say that like Rebels leans too heavily on the Clone Wars, which I totally disagree after rewatching this season, because season 1 they don't at all. Like they use their own storyline and they carry it themselves. Of course it's going to lean a little bit on the Clone Wars, because Kanan is an escaped Padawan from that era, and that's always going to affect him a little bit. And I think every time they hone back on that and they remind you, Clone Wars is the story where it breaks apart everything and it shatters everything, and Rebels is the show that has to put everything back together. So to do that, you do need to use some of the same pieces and some of the same components, and I felt like it did that very well. I thought that the villain was interesting enough. Like, I wasn't expecting some big deep thing. He's hunting Jedi because Vader told him to. That's fine. The real gritty stuff, the real good stuff, is the Jedi stuff and the Rebel stuff, and when they all work together. Sabine didn't have as big of a role as I remember her having. She's a little bit kind of like your stereotypical like punk rebel type girl that you imagine. I'm really excited to get back into the Mandalorian stuff with her, of course. I know her character fleshes out a lot. Like I said, Hera's still my favorite. Ahsoka appearing in the end is just so sweet. And that realization that not only is she working with the rebellion, but she's pretty much like the eyes and ears of it, is just something special. So I think that Rebels really does take you through its own story before it's like, hey, here's Ahsoka Tano. She was the star of the Clone Wars. But these other people are still the stars of their show. And I mean, like, I need to rewatch season 2 and see how they handled Ahsoka. I usually rewatch her episodes. She is my favorite. She's one of my favorite Star Wars characters. I really liked how in this show they actually show some components of the Force that you do see in the sequels, though. Like, I really loved that they did the interrogation scene where he can use the Force to pull, and that the Grand Inquisitor has the Force, I think is really neat. I would really appreciate more of that backstory with Vader and the Grand Inquisitors, actually, or the Grand Inquisitor and the other Inquisitors, because I think that, like, finding them and training them and converting them to the dark side and kind of using them like that, it's like they're like the Dark Jedi a little bit from the EU. So I'm fascinated in that story. I want more of that. This made me want more of that. So I think that that's a testament to how good this season sells it. And I think everyone's motivations carries through. And I think there's enough development in season 1 in terms of the plot that makes you want to watch season 2. So I don't know what I was on the first time. Maybe it's because I have more of a connection to the characters. Maybe it's because I kind of know where they end up that it makes it better. But I look forward to powering on with season 2. Did you guys watch Star Wars Rebels? What did you think of season 1? I know we're going back a few years in the memory archives. It's worth a rewatch. Because again, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm not a fan of the lightsabers. I'm not a fan of the design, the thin design of the lightsabers. The physical animation of the characters, I've decided I actually kind of, some of it I like better than Clone Wars, some of it I don't. Rebels does a better job establishing its original characters in the beginning than Clone Wars did with Ahsoka. Because, like, Rebels has 6 characters introduced, and then Clone Wars had 1, really. And Rebels is doing, like, a good 5 out of 6. 4 out of 6, I guess, if you don't count Chopper, better than others. So, just my thoughts. May the Force be with you guys. Have a great day.